Hello, I'm Brandy Yates, and joining me in studio today is Assistant Police Chief Ken Plaga to talk about gun violence, gun laws, and safety. Ken, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandy.
Well, unfortunately, we have to do this kind of an interview because of all the recent tragedies, threats. Gun violence is being more prevalent in this day and age. Can you talk a little bit about school safety at the local level at Hazlet and Okemos that the Meridian Township Police Department has put in place to kind of prevent such tragedies that we've seen across the country?
Sure. We've worked, the police department's worked with both districts since 2001, preparing emergency response plans, and not just for gun violence, but really all hazards. So if you prepare for every hazard, you're also prepared for these incidences of violence. We've done exercises and drills with the schools. We review best practices, go over their lockdown procedures, making sure that they are in line with what the recommendations are. A lot of the work that we have done with those folks includes training faculty and staff, making sure that they understand what to do if a situation does arise and how to prevent things and allow the police department to respond more effectively.
And can you give examples of what kind of things they can do? I know you don't want to reveal too much as a part of a security measure. What kind of things do we have to put in place to prevent?
Well, there's several things in place. Both districts have an alarm system that reports directly to the police department. The most important thing about responding to these incidences is getting law enforcement there quickly. The faster we can get there, the faster we can stop this. And then also slowing down the perpetrator, restricting their access to the students and faculty and the potential victims. So we received a grant through the state and obtained an alarm system that they have that really speaks directly to the law enforcement officers. So we know immediately if there's a situation at a school, and officers can respond quickly. They've instituted some locking procedures, exterior building doors being locked, restricting access to the buildings, and that has really helped to have a focal point so everybody has to come in and out at one building. So if something doesn't seem right, they can contact us quickly, effectively. We work with them on lockdown procedures and how to manage themselves, and if they have students, manage those students effectively to keep them out of harm's way. There's specific procedures we teach them so that they can keep those kids safe.
Okay, and I think security cameras have been installed in recent years at the at the schools as well. Does that kind of help combat so you kind of know where the perpetrator is?
Now, when we respond, yes, that camera system can help us locate that person in the building because some of those school buildings are just very, very large. It also allows us to see if suspicious activity has been going on because a lot of times these incidences are precipitated by other things that have happened inside the building. So if we have things that are suspicious, we can go back and with the schools review that video. Okemos and Hazlet both have tapes in their buildings, so they record what's going on in the building and can show that to us at a later date if something seems suspicious.
And how often are drills done to practice? Well,
drills are done quite frequently, and they're required by the state to do so many annually, and then they have to, after they perform those drills, they're required by law to post the fact that they actually did them online. So if you go to the school's website, you can see, and I'm thinking both schools have already done at least 3 drills this year.
Oh goodness, and it's March.
Right, and yes. So, and they continue to do it at different times of day. So, because there's so many variations of where the kids are during a school day. So, and honestly, right now we're in the process of reviewing safety drills and procedures and best practices because, in 2001, what was the best way to handle the situation we realized is a little bit different in 2018.
Okay, and so what other training has the police department done, not necessarily just in schools, but for an active shooter situation in general?
So we annually, our entire department goes through an annual training for active violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be a shooter. Somebody can be doing violence with something else.
Okay.
But we train all of our officers annually on how to respond to those situations and effectively stop that from continuing on, neutralizing the threat. We do it in different building settings so that officers are familiar with different buildings so that when something bad happens, it's not the first time they're probably in a building. We've also conducted training with some of the local businesses as well as with the township employees on the run, hide, fight which is the method for public buildings, on how to respond if you're in a situation where violence is starting to occur. So we provide training to outside organizations, we train our officers internally, and then we've also purchased equipment, shields, vests, entry equipment, so that if somebody tries to keep us out while they're doing harm, we have a way of getting into buildings.
So can you go a little bit more into further detail on the run, hide, fight?
Well, run, hide, fight is really the three things you're going to do if you're confronted by a situation that has active violence going on. If you can, you run away. Run as far away from the violence as you can to protect yourself. If you can't run away, if there's some reason you're in a location that you can't run away, hide. Lock yourself in a room, turn off the lights, be quiet, be certain to silence your cell phone, because when these things happen, people start calling, and we all know even in vibrate mode, you can hear that cell phone.
Right.
So the important thing is to try and keep yourself, hidden. And then fight. A lot of people, they talk about fighting being wrong, and we teach our children not to fight, but if cornered and there's no other option, you really have to fight to save your own life, and you have to fight to save your life. So
right.
taking whatever action is necessary to protect yourself and maybe a coworker, friend, or family is very important.
So you kind of talked about silencing your phone. How do you think social media has kind of played a role in either informing the public on these kind of situations or even maybe hindering the investigation process?
Well, social media is an aspect that we have to look at in all our investigations now. Sure, we use our social media at the police department to reach out and obtain suspect identification, maybe witnesses that we didn't know about, things like that. So it's been a great help to us. But social media can also hamper us because it can give misinformation. It can give information about things that maybe we didn't want out there just yet because we're still in the process of doing an investigation. And then social media has also increased a format for people to make veiled threats or legitimate threats to others.
Right.
Years ago, it used to be you could leave school or your workplace and you were gone. Now it follows you everywhere with your phone. Right.
So let's kind of clear up some possibly misconceptions about gun laws in place, the gun-free zones, open carry, concealed weapons. Can you go into detail about each of those to maybe clear up some misinformation that people may have?
So gun-free zones like schools and churches, you cannot have a firearm, you cannot carry a gun. Even somebody who has a license to carry a concealed weapon, there are restrictions. Certain licenses don't have those restrictions, but there are restrictions that you can't take a firearm to a school zone. So those are restrictions. One of the biggest confusions that occurs is the difference between open carry and carrying a concealed weapon. Open carry is where you're carrying a firearm and it's open and people can see it. It's in a holster on your hip, or it's a gun slung over your shoulder and you're walking down public property.
Right.
That's legal in the state of Michigan. So there's a big open carry movement that's out there, and if if anybody looks for it, they'll find several stories about open carry. Carrying a concealed weapon, you can be licensed to carry a concealed weapon, and that means what it says, concealed, so that it's not open to the public, and you can carry it around unless private property owners restrict that carry. Most people that have concealed weapons permits, I would say 99.9% of them are all good, responsible gun owners and follow the rules and laws and make sure that they make law enforcement aware if they come in contact with us, things like that. But so that's the difference. Open carry, you can see it, and you're out on public property. It can be restricted by private property owners.
Right.
Concealed weapons, again, concealed, you can't see it. That also can be restricted. Some stores or businesses have signs that say no firearms on it.
Right.
And that's the property owner's right to say you can't have that.
Okay, and so can you comment about currently in place about any kind of background check or training that people are supposed to go through to either have a license for concealed weapons or open carry?
Well, so just to purchase a firearm, you have to come in, they do a check to get a permit to purchase a pistol. Now, long guns, those are checked at the retailer. The retailer selling the firearm to you runs your name through a federal database, and it says whether or not you're prohibited from owning a firearm or not.
Right.
If you want to buy a pistol, you have to get a pistol permit. You come into any law enforcement agency can issue those, and you submit you fill out the paperwork. They do a check to make sure you have no prohibitors, and then they issue you a document that allows you to take that to a retailer and purchase a pistol. Now, if you have a concealed weapons permit, you've already gone through all those background checks.
Prior to.
Right, prior to. So you go in and you can present your concealed weapons permit information, and they can sell you a pistol at that time or a firearm. So those are some of the things that are required before purchasing a firearm.
Okay. And from a police perspective, can you comment on the accessibility of maybe getting guns or getting these kind of weapons that are violence in these situations that have occurred?
Well, there's several stores that sell firearms around. There's some chain stores and such that sell firearms. They follow the federal laws and the state laws as to how to get those firearms. So that's really, we follow what laws are there. We we don't necessarily implement or push for certain laws one way or the other.
Exactly.
Legislature sets those standards, and we make sure that we do our best to make sure everybody follows the law.
Okay. Is there anything else before we wrap up that you think is important for our audience to know about gun violence or any kind of violence, maybe to prepare yourself or just an education standpoint?
Well, what I'd like to say is that, people didn't necessarily always say something if they felt something was out of place or odd, or somebody was maybe having a problem. And it doesn't necessarily mean somebody's going to commit acts of violence, but the culture of not really saying or sharing information with either a responsible adult if you're a child, or a coworker or a person that can do some sort of looking into that. It is so important for people, if they see something that is suspicious or odd to them, or they have any kind of concern, that they share it so that that can be looked into. Maybe it's not somebody that has a propensity to violence, but maybe it's somebody who needs some help, and we can get them the right help. Okay. So that whole code of silence thing needs to be broken, and people need to share this information with the proper authorities.
Even if they're not sure, it's still better to report it, even to come to police. You guys are open with these they don't have to feel embarrassed to report something then when there's not really a threat there, but there could be.
One of the things we like to tell everybody, and it doesn't matter what your call is call us, and we'd be more than happy to make sure that it's nothing, and it actually makes us happier to find that it's not really a serious situation than you not calling, and it ends up being something that we should have addressed earlier.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ken. It was great having you on the show and clearing up some things.
Thanks for having me, Brandy.
Thank you.